Well, the controversial He Puapua report was written as part of the process to fulfilling our commitment to the UN. Authored by an independent group, it recommends a refocus on rangatiratanga, Māori self-determination. It also reignited claims it is the road to separatism. Well, to discuss this, joining me now is Māori Party Kaurere, Waititi. Tēnā koe, thanks for your time. Good morning. So, He Puapua says by 2040, government should be sharing power with Māori more fairly. What does that look like?
Well, it looks like the true intent of what the Tiriti o Waitangi was in the first place. And so Article 1 was allowing for kāwanatanga, not sovereignty, not ownership, but custodianship and governance.
Right.
Article 2 was about tino rangatiratanga. And so we haven't been able to align in that particular space yet. And the third part was about mana orite, which was to be treated as equal citizens in this country.
Okay.
And so I think we are having, I think, a mature and adult conversation about actually what was the true intent of the Tiriti o Waitangi and the whakaputanga 1835, and I'm sure we can have that move to the right direction.
We'll work out whether we're mature enough to have that conversation in a moment. Do you think that some of this is generally already happening? I mean, like management of dock estates, kura, kohanga reo, papa kāinga, even the establishment of a Māori health authority. So this co-governance is already there?
Well, I think constitutional change doesn't mean trying to fit Rangi's foot into Cinderella's slipper.
Okay.
This is about a constitutional transformation where we can sit around the table together and actually look at what does tino rangatiratanga for Māori look like, and what it doesn't look like is working within a Westminster system,
right,
to find solutions
so you're saying
to the
that
problems that have been created by that system.
Okay, so you're saying the examples that I just listed are like, you know, they're just piecemeal, they're band-aids rather than looking at the whole system?
Oh, I wouldn't say they're band-aids, but there needs to be, where's the development from there? And then how do we start moving Māori into being more in control of their own destiny and in control of their own oranga? And I think, you know, the UN declaration, and I just want to acknowledge Peter Sharples, and I want to acknowledge the National Party of that time, who saw the foresight of that particular
They signed
bill.
up to the UN declaration.
And now the Labour Party have seen, actually, we need to start implementing this.
Okay.
And so we're quite happy as the Māori Party that everybody else has picked this up.
Okay, so does He Puapua give you the roadmap? If you look at He Puapua, is that what you want?
Well, He Puapua only came out yesterday. We're talking about basing our transformation in terms of constitution on the founding documents of this country. Te whakaputanga, which is the Declaration of Independence, 1835, Tiriti o Waitangi in 1840, and then we've also had the Matike Mai report that's been out for a few years now.
About constitutional
That's right, about constitutional reform, and I think, like I said, we need to have an adult and mature conversation about what that looks like moving forward.
Let's talk about some concrete examples from He Puapua. It suggests an upper house of parliament which has a power-sharing arrangement, 50-50 Māori, non-Māori representation. What do you think of an upper house like that?
Well, look, we need to...
I don't think you like it.
We need to tease that out a little bit more about what that might look like. In the Matike Mai report also talks about a tripartite type of relationship where tino rangatiratanga is acknowledged for Māori, where kāwanatanga is also acknowledged, and then there is this the joining of the two in the third part of that.
In the middle, okay.
Yep.
But in your maiden speech, you went further than an upper house. You said, in fact, you demanded a Māori parliament. Right. You stand by that,
yes,
right? Okay,
that's absolutely different to having an upper house.
Yeah, that is right.
Is that we want to be in total control of our
That's a separate parliament, right?
Yes, that's right.
How would that work? Would it be democratically elected, or would it be appointed, representatives appointed iwi or hapu?
You hear words like co-governance and co-design and things like that. Well, actually, we want to design, and we want the government to now align. Because if we're designing, we're not going to create solutions. We are the solutions to many of the dysfunctions that the state has created amongst our people. So we want our own sovereignty, which is tino rangatiratanga, which is Article 2 promised us.
Yep, okay, I understand it's been promised, as you say, but what does it look like? I mean, can you give me an example of how, in your mind, a Māori parliament would work?
Well, look at the Tūhoi settlement. That wasn't co-governance. That was Tūhoi sovereignty. And so the transition of assets back to Tūhoi will show how actually this can work. And Tūhoi is probably an example of how they have been able to negotiate within the system to be able to come up with their own their own sovereign solutions to their problems.
So if a Māori parliament, if a member of Māori parliament is selected, not elected, how are they going to be held accountable? Are they just going to be held accountable to their own iwi or hapu?
Well, that's exactly right, because that's how it's always been. Before the arrival of Pākehā to this country, we were answerable to ourselves. And so this is just a realignment of being undisturbed of our taonga, of our possessions. And so this is what we're saying, is that we can have a conversation about this, but let's honour the first document. So He Puapua came out yesterday.
Yeah.
Let's honour the first document that's been here for over 180 years.
Okay, well, first, let's just get rid of He Puapua for the moment. Do you think the government buried He Puapua?
Well, they've said that they're not going to use it as the roadmap.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
They want to go out and do some more consultation.
Yeah. Are you happy with
My
that?
concern would be the wider New Zealand, because this is what happens in partnership. So partnership is democracy, democracy is majority rules, and so we lose out again. And so shouldn't Indigenous peoples be coming up with Indigenous solutions to their oranga? Why would you leave it to a majority then to decide the fate of Indigenous peoples? Because that's what's been happening all over the world for many, many years.
In the consultation process that the government has outlined this week, there's going to talk to iwi first and then the wider consultation period. Do you believe that the wider consultation period should not happen?
The wider consultation period and the process usually dominates what actually Indigenous peoples want. And that's what happens all over the world.
So do you think that your voice will get lost again?
It gets lost everywhere. It gets lost everywhere. We've had to take a racist policy within councils that did the same thing around Māori wards. And so this is what happens in a democracy where people say it's fair, but actually it's not fair against Indigenous peoples because, like I said, the majority rules.
OK, so yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, because the critics of He Puapua say that it recommends a political system based on race rather than the democratic principle of everybody being equal. So you say to them, forget that. I mean, that's not how we should be based.
No, I think the country should be having a conversation about being a tiriti-centric Aotearoa. And a tiriti-centric Aotearoa has the equal mana of tangata whenua and tangata tiriti. And so tangata whenua and tangata tiriti is the birth, I think, of a true tiriti-centric Aotearoa. Tangata tiriti being non-Māori who are committed to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, righting the wrongs of yesterday and looking forward to a more positive and prosperous Aotearoa. And
a more equitable one.
And a more equitable one.
OK, but some people, the critics, say that it's the road to separatism going down this road. What do you say to them? I mean, that's been the argument of national...
We've been on the road to separatism for 180 years.
Yeah.
And so if we look at a Tiriti-centric Aotearoa, I think we could probably be the best nation in the world heading down this track, is that you've got tangata whenua, tangata tiriti equally making decisions, equitably making decisions for our people, and actually moving New Zealand, which seems to be... Everybody thinks it's in the Atlantic Ocean somewhere, and realigning it back into Polynesia, into
OK, so we've seen the political debate and the political arguments from, like, National Act about separatism, but what about the public themselves? Do you think they're more on board with this than the political opposition? Absolutely.
There's a generation of tangata tiriti on the rise. And this is a young, intelligent generation that know the injustices of the past, but are committed to working towards a tiriti-centric Aotearoa.
Right. So are you positive? I'm
absolutely positive.
OK.
That is happening. I feel that when I go into the universities to talk. I feel that when I go into even mainstream schools. But even those types of words, mainstream, general, role, all those types of things, it actually puts Māori in second place because you're not mainstream and you're not the general public. You're Māori. And so we've got to start looking at tangata tiriti, tangata whenua, and start using the narrative that our people intended this country to be.
OK, when you see the opposition criticising, say, the notion of partnership and power sharing with Māori, does it make you look back, wonder and say, well, why did the Māori Party get into bed with the National Party in the first place, and how long they could govern like that? I mean, does it disappoint you?
Well, look, this is the system that we're currently in. It's a Westminster system, and our people have tried to manipulate and work in this system for a long, long time.
OK.
But I think it's time for us to start looking at some new systems where it's more equitable and more equal for Indigenous peoples here in this country.
OK. Does that mean at the next election you could rule out working with National Act as a Māori Party?
Well, at the moment, I wouldn't work with them at all. Just with the rhetoric that's coming out of those particular parties, they don't align with us.
OK.
We're not saying that Māori that we don't look at working with anybody. You know, we've got to make sure that their policies, their principles align with ours.
OK. All right. Just quickly, hate speech. You've called for a joint police task force into what you say is the rise in hate speech against Māori, but hate speech laws have been sort of proposed now. Does that address your concerns?
No, it doesn't, because the law hasn't been implemented, and this type of rhetoric and propaganda has been driven by the National Enact Party, which is, I believe, which has brought rise to this more racial disharmony.
So
in this
you're
country.
saying the National Enact have sort of,
Oh, they fueled it.
incited,
Absolutely.
they fueled it.
Absolutely.
Hate speech.
Absolutely.
Hate speech
well, here's
against
the
Māori.
difference. Absolutely. So when you're using words like separatism and apartheid, you talk to people who have lived in those regimes, and you tell me how much love was in there, and whether it was freedom of speech. That was hate speech. When you're talking about apartheid, and you look at what happened in South Africa and places like that, even America itself, you know, where they had separatism, those are not very nice words to be using and enforcing onto Indigenous peoples. We do not. Those words do not belong to us, nor do those ideologies.
Are you denying their opportunity to use those kinds of words, or are you denying their opportunity to actually just raise those kinds of questions?
Well, it's hard for you to use those words against Indigenous peoples who have had to live through regimes like apartheid and separatism. And so, absolutely, that creates a space for people then to start working their narrative against Indigenous peoples and in Aotearoa, it's tangata whenua.
All right, so given what you've experienced since you've been in Parliament, has it been a culture shock for you?
Absolutely. And so you're in the public face, and what you do is you do get hate speech, and you do get.
Because you walked out of Parliament saying Judith Collins was asking too many racist questions.
Well, the thing is, you can't call anybody racist in Parliament, but you're allowed to say racist things.
Right.
And so when you're using separatism and apartheid against an Indigenous peoples, you know, that sounds like an oxymoron to me.
Are you enjoying yourself in Parliament?
I am.
Okay, all right. When in your maiden speech, you took your tie off, you called it a colonial noose, and now ties aren't compulsory, so you made an immediate change. I've got to ask you, I mean, what is the next change that you want to implement?
Well, the next change is I think we need to start looking at how Māori can participate more equally and equitably in that particular space, in a tiriti-centric Aotearoa. Not in a democracy, because, like I said, democracy is the majority rules, and Indigenous people, especially Māori at 16% of the population in this country, will lose out and will sit in second place again.
Tēnā koe, thank you for your time. Rawiri Waititi, co-leader of the Māori Party.